Mm, I've got my thingy lights on, the Lumi lights. You know, the one that wakes you up, that makes you not be depressed because it's daylight. Whatever it's supposed to do. Look at my hair. I'm just out the shower. So, I mean, to be honest, I haven't coloured it for ages. And this is its colour. This is my hair's colour now. You wouldn't think it used to be jet black when I was sweet 15, 16, as in that picture. Just coming up to my 16th birthday. And it was, my hair was jet black, like my dad's. And like my dad's. And his mom, I guess, I'd never met her, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who was Spanish. Her name was Margaret Delgado. But I never found out a lot about her. I could have done. I don't know. I don't know what was wrong with me, really. I had lots of opportunities to trace family history on both sides. And you would think, being a historian as a craft, that I would have done my own history, wouldn't you? But maybe I was just frightened of what I'd find out. I don't know. No, I don't think it was that. I think it was pure laziness, or that I thought everybody else's life was far more interesting than mine, which wasn't true. Because, as a lot of you know, I've done a lot of things with my life. In my life, I didn't go out to work until the kids were older. And by older, I mean, I worked part-time in a warehouse, just as cashier, because the hours were sitting with Al during the day and me at the night. I worked as a shorthand typist. I worked as a secretary. I worked as a personal assistant. I worked for Women's Aid as deputy director in an abused women's hostel, not hospital. I've got Gaza on my brain. What else did I do? I've done accounting work, bookkeeping work. I was told when I worked at a computing company, and I went there temporary as a temp, and I had this fantastic boss, Ken Parton. I doubt he's around now. And he was older then, and he was an absolute genius, computer genius. And I worked for him, and he was the typical scatterbrained professor type, you know, hair all over the place, and but very on the ball with knowledge about his area of expertise. And I was his sidekick. I went in as a secretary and was working for him, and then it became more and more that he was giving me more and more to do, and to the point of writing some of the stuff for him, and I didn't really know what I was writing. Obviously he okayed it, but we got through an enormous amount of work. And that's what happened at social services too. I went as a shorthand typist, then was promoted to assistant to the urban renewal fellow, who again I was very fortunate to have him, and Wally Rose, his name was, Walter Rose, and he said a lot to me that, you know, I would tell Alf, and Alf said, he's got you weighed up, he's right. And he used to say to me, Walter Rose used to say to me, you need to go and get some professional qualifications in regards to this area if you're going to stay in the computing field. He said, and the chances are you're never going to work for anybody who's brighter than you, and that's going to be your problem throughout your working life. And in a way it was, my back's aching. In a way it was. And yeah, I might have been brighter, and I might have had, or have, an IQ of 149 and be able to do, like Al said, you can turn your hand to anything. I think you have to have an interest in it before you can excel at it. I don't believe that anybody can just go in and be an expert on something when they've got no interest in the field. I think you'd be mediocre at best. But I was fortunate in some of the people I worked for, and working for Women's Aid, and you would see women come in with their children, and having been through the most traumatic time, and then what some of them would do would be to give their abuser their address. And it happened on more than a few occasions, when we would have irate males at the door, banging the door and insisting to see so-and-so, and the police had to be called, and of course the person had to be moved to another safe place. But what's the point in that when they give their addresses out? And that's easy, isn't it, to say when you're not the person concerned. They were probably hoping that the fact that they'd left would be a shock to his system, and everything would be hunky-dory once again, and he'd have learnt a lesson. They don't. I'll tell you, leopards and spots, they don't change them. They don't. And one of the worst abusers I personally came across was a fellow called Larry Rushton, and he was a group leader at a certain social services department. He went to be deputy director at another social services department, but not before he'd gone and destroyed somebody's marriage on the night of his leaving. What a piece of work he was, knowing that the person was vulnerable and sad. And, you know, he took that advantage. So abusers come in all shapes and sizes. They can be the worst drunk, alcoholic, street fighter, or they can be the quiet person in the corner, maybe the computer nerd, or they can be like that fellow from social services, knowing their job, knowing psychology, knowing what they were doing. So they come in all shapes and sizes, but they don't change. I believe that people can be tempted. I believe that people can be brought into a situation that they can't cope with. But persistent abusers, no. And my sister, not the one that died, at his hands. My eldest sister, the beautiful one, the one who used to do ballet, she was married to a man who abused their kids more so than he did her. And then the one time she ended up in hospital, and I went to see her, and then the next thing we know, she was somewhere and nobody knew where she was. And so I used contacts at social services to find out, and she had gone into a women's aid shelter, but I wasn't involved with the shelters then. But she went back to him, and I don't know whether he ever laid hands on her again, but he did with the kids. And my niece who used to ring me up, she passed away now, she used to ring me up regularly, and most of her conversation was how much she hated her dad and what he did to them, and just stays with kids for life when that happens. Or if it happens to somebody who's older, who has had traumatic experiences, particularly when it's somebody in the know and a trained psychologist, as in Rushton's case, and they know which buttons to press, and it's just a horrible situation all around, really. This isn't what I meant to come on and talk about, so I'm going to have to talk about what I want to talk about in the next video. But you know, my teeth, these have got to be done, and my next appointment is at the end of the month, and then it'll be, I've decided I'm going to have the cobalt ones and the NHS ones to fall back on. So it's just a case of choosing the colour, and I suppose I'll take another mould to make sure that everything's as it should be. He's got to file that tooth down, that bang light one there. Funnily enough, when my teeth were in, it was hardly noticeable, but he'll file that down, and I think the one there needs a crown or something, and that's it. And it's just a case of getting the cobalt teeth and being all beautiful and coming in, and my red lipstick. So that's a treat for you. I ought to get my hair done, hadn't I? Blonde hair and red lipstick, sort of Marilyn Monroe-esque. But as I say, that isn't what I came on to talk to you about this morning, and it isn't about foodie that I wanted to talk about, and it isn't about what's happening in Palestine. I've had my say about that, and look, I would never be Muslim. I would never embrace the Muslim religion, ever. I think it's a very dangerous religion and it scares me. And I've worked with them, and yes, they were polite and everything else, but at the end of the day, their religion is first, before their spouse, before their families, before anything. And it's a very dogmatic, rigid, unforgiving religion, and that's not something I could ever embrace. But neither do I embrace carpet bombing of anybody, and the scenes coming out of Gaza and Hebron throughout the years, the wars throughout the years, you know, it has to stop. There has to be two states, there has to be a balance, and I'm just hoping there will, but I haven't looked today. I'm guessing that there's not much change. But what I wanted to talk to you about, you probably all know by now that I've got a problem with my throat, and I've got something called Barrett's esophagus. And you can hear my voice. My voice has changed so much for the worst since that time, since I was diagnosed, which it's got to be about 8 years ago now. So that's something that I want to come on and talk to you about, because it's playing on my mind, and well, I'll tell you about it, and if it can help somebody else who has got a similar problem, don't leave it like I did. Don't leave it. I'll be back later, everybody. No more Palestine today. Back later.